Today I'm sharing with you two hoodies, one for men, one for women, one is for my son, one is for myself. I got a special Mother's Day gift. There they are, they sort of have matching colors. One has a half zipper, one has a full zipper, and I'm going to be sharing lots of footage about how to deal with the line hoods, the zippers, all that good stuff. So keep watching. Hi sewing friends, I'm Karina from liftingpinsandneedles.com, a channel that is all about sewing, limitless sewing. If you're always stopping by, welcome. And if you're new to this channel, in this channel you always see a lot of sewing footage where you can see sewing techniques, different ways things can be sewn, and maybe you can apply these to your own sewing at home. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you two hoodies. They can also be pullovers. And actually, these patterns belong to like a trio of equivalent patterns that Love Notions has designed for kids, women, and children. So if you look at them, they all have the same features, only they have been drafted in different sizes and for different shapes. So the kids version is called the Navigator Pullover, and it's for sizes 2 to 16. And we have the men's one called North Star Pullover and Hoodie, and the women's one is called Constellation Pullover and Hoodie. This is the Constellation Pullover that I sewed last year. It's made out of stretch embroidered mesh. It's super nice, super fancy. I have a video about it last year and also a blog post I wrote for Love Notions. This one has a full zipper. I did have to transform this front area that in the original is composed of two pieces to be made into one. This one has a curved hem. So this is the one I already have and I really love it. So if you want to know more about this one and how to transform the front to just have a full front piece, you can go ahead and I will link down below to see that video and that blog post where it explains everything. But in this video, I have made more traditional ones. And I have made one for my son, a North Star hoodie, because he likes the hoods. I've made myself a Constellation hoodie. I've also made a hoodie for myself. So I'm really excited about them. Now, I have to warn you, there might be a lot of parrot noises. There have been a lot of parrots here on this tree next to me. If you hear them throughout, I'm going to try and block them off, and I hope you can't hear them that loud. In a lot of areas of the world, Mother's Day is being celebrated today, and today we had a little Mother's Day parade. I don't know who organized it, but a little caravan of cars with balloons and music just drove past our street a couple of hours ago, and I did film a little bit. Super interesting, so have a look. I gave myself a Mother's Day gift, which was making my son something. Sometimes the joy of giving is sort of like a gift in itself because you see the happiness in the other person. So that was one of my Mother's Day gifts, to give him something, and he loved it. He also let me photograph him, so that is a real blessing. I've had a really special day. It's a nice day, once a year. So all these three patterns feature a collar like the one I'm wearing now, or a hood. From the top here, there will be a half zipper, so it won't go all the way to the bottom. So the front part will be composed of two parts. The top has the zipper, and the bottom that will have a pocket lining and a kangaroo pocket on the front that can be optional. Then there's a hemband, there's cuffs. You can do a sort of like a curved hem as well. So there's lots of options with these patterns, but the main feature that all of them have is how this is constructed. This half zipper with the collar or the hood, it's all constructed very the same for these three patterns. You would typically make these with ponte, French terry, sweatshirting, fleece, that sort of nice stuff. So this is obviously not made with that. And the two I'm going to show you today, one is actually made with sweatshirting, that is for my son. And my one is actually just made with a cotton spandex, lighter weight. You know, the hood inside can be lined with a lightweight woven fabric, and you need a zipper that's about 20 inches long, and you need about 1.5 yards of bias tape. I'll put an image on the screen, but for the men's and the women's versions that I'm going to share, the sizes go from extra small to 3XL, so you'll see different measurements there for the chest or for the bust for women. The women's version, of course, has the standard and the full bust. The men's obviously does not. There is quite a lot of positive ease around this design. For the men's version, you have about 4.5 inches of positive ease around the chest. And for the women, about 6 inches around the bust. Then at the hips, you have about 2 to 3 inches of positive ease. It'll be sort of slimmer fitting at the hips, still with some positive ease, so that's good. There's no negative ease anywhere. So the fabric that you use doesn't really need to have that much stretch. And if you actually get sweatshirting, it doesn't really have that much stretch. It's just a little bit, you know. Ponte is the same. They're sort of fabrics that don't stretch large amounts, you know. I had to take a deep dive in my stash and come up with 3 different types of fabrics in order to complete all the pattern pieces. For the main fabric, I only had 1 meter, so I wasn't able to do the whole thing with the main fabric. So you'll see a different color sleeve and a different color lining for the hood, although they all go together and match the main fabric. So I really like how that turned out. So in Up Close and So Personal, you're going to see how all this comes to be. The half zipper with the lined hood. I'm concentrating in all that area, and all the sewing you can see there will be good for the North Star pullover, for the Constellation, the women's one, and also the kids Navigator pullover. That one is going to be sewn the same. So if you want to get any of these patterns, you can see how that area is done, how I'm going to show you. So let's hop into that. These are all the pattern pieces for this hoodie. It does look like a lot of pattern pieces, but it is going to be pretty simple to put together, mainly straight seams. These 2 fronts, and they're not cut on the fold because there's a zipper there in between. And then under there comes the pocket lining, which is made from the same fabric I've chosen. And then I've got a contrast grey kangaroo pocket out of grey sweatshirting. On the bottom here, I have the hemband that I've cut out from the same fabric. I'll talk to you about that in a second. The back is cut on the fold. Here are the sleeve pieces, the cuff, and all these pieces are for the hood. The hood is made with a center panel that goes between the 2 main hoods, and there are also lining pieces there. So that's basically what I need, and I need a zipper that's going to fit that length right there. I'm also going to need a little bit of bias tape. This is the main fabric. It's a sweatshirting that's fleece backed, and from selvage to selvage, this is how it looks. Like the raindrops are going down, and the stretch is minimal, like most sweatshirtings are. And you don't need it to be stretchy for a hoodie, you know, this is fine. But this particular one, if you stretch it lengthwise, it's got quite a lot of stretch. I wouldn't want to cut it with sideways raindrops, but I think because this way the vertical stretch is much more, I can use it for the hembands. And so I've just cut the hembands with the sideways drops. Instead of using ribbing or anything, I'm just going to use the same stuff. And that's what you see there for the cuffs and here for the hemband. This hood has 3 pieces. These 2 are the ones that go on the side, and there's a center panel there. From the top curve, there's a notch, and on this long piece, when you look at it, there are 2 notches above there. So that notch there matches that notch there, and then on the other side the same. And I've got the main one already pinned. You can see here the notch of the center panel and the notch of the hood, and they match. Going to give you a really nice shaped hood. And you know, to optimize fabric, I'm using contrast gray. This gray is one of the colors in there, so I think it'll look cool. This is the lining piece of the hood. It's already been sewn, and on the bottom there's a raw edge there of this lining. And the easiest way for me to finish the bottom is to just wrap my bias tape around it and just pin it there and just sew in one go. This is very easy to do with cotton bias tape. Sometimes other types of bias tape, you want to sew one side first, like the edge there, then flip it and then top stitch it. But I just think it's 2 steps that cotton tape doesn't really need. And you know, if you just wrap it around and go once, it can still look nice and achieve the same results. So this type is my most common approach. Just pin, make sure they're both even on the same side, and just sew. That's how that looks. Super neat. It's sewn on both sides, so I'll just put the lining aside. I've sewn the shoulder seams there. This is the front piece. It's shorter because there'll be a zipper there and then a bottom piece. So shoulder seam sewn to the back piece. That's the other one. I've got the main hood right sides together with the neckline, and I've matched it from the edge right there, from the edge of this hood neckline. There's a notch on the hood piece that matches the shoulder seam, and then going along there's a notch on the neckline that matches the center panel on the hood, same as there. So it's super easy to put together. This other shoulder seam matches that one, so it's just super easy to put this hood piece to the neckline, and now it's just sewing it with 3/8 seam allowance. After sewing that, the seam allowance needs to be trimmed to like 1/8 of an inch, so tiny. Seam is going to be finished at a later stage with the lining that I've just bound the edges from, so you really need this to have a tiny seam allowance, and it'll also reduce the bulk. I have the hood attached, as you saw, trim the seam allowance. I've pulled all the back hanging off the ironing board, and I've just got the front piece. It's a short little bit here that will have a zipper, and then another piece will come underneath, but the zipper has to be put on first. Inside here, I just fused 1/2 inch of a strip of interfacing onto the center just to stabilize it. This fabric does have some vertical stretch, and I don't want it to have that stretch here where the zipper goes. So there's the seam that is part of the hood right there, but it's just a straight piece there. And look, my zipper is longer than it needs to be. It's actually a separating zipper for a jacket, but it's the only navy thing I have, so I'm just gonna go with it. So the zipper pull is there. I'm just gonna put the zipper right sides together with the fabric. So right side of the zipper to the right side of the fabric on one side there. On the top, I trimmed away the tape to just have 3/8 of the tape, and then comes the pull. So I'm going to line it up right there and then sew down one side and then flip and do on the other side. I don't like separating these. I like keeping them together at all times. That ensures that these seams are always going to match. I've got one side of the zipper basted on there. Just some hand basting. The zipper tape matches the edge there, and it just goes down to the bottom here. I want to baste the other side right now. So I'm just going to flip this. Bring this other side over and then match everything. So I want to baste the other side, making sure that the seams here from the hood are going to match and that everything's going to match on the bottom. Once I've got them both basted, then I'm going to go to the sewing machine and sew it. You can see I've got this hand basted on both sides, making sure that that seam matches there, that it matches on the top, and that it matches on the bottom right there. When I flip it over, it looks like it's already been sewn, but it hasn't. It's just hand basted. I've got my typical presser foot there, and I'm just gonna have the edge of the presser foot go along the edge of the zipper tape and the fabric, and that's how I can reference being straight. So I've pulled this down a little bit so I can get past this point, and then I'm gonna pull this up there and then keep going down. Now I'm doing the other side. Before I go further, I'm just going to pull this down again like I did on the other side. Push that pull away and then keep going up. You can see here that those seams match, and it's easier to do that when you don't separate your zipper. It matches at the bottom too, so it's just easier that way. Now I was thinking maybe I would like to put a little piece of fabric to cover this area here. I might unstitch this bottom bit there and add that on there right now. I should have done that before I sewed the zipper, but I just came up with the idea to do that now. I have a tiny little piece from the same fabric I used for the lining of the hood, so I've just folded it in half like that so that the folded bit is up, And then I unstitched part of the zipper at the bottom, and I'm just going to put that in there. There. And then I'm going to go ahead and sew that little bit down. And I think it's going to look cool that way. I've seen ready to wear clothes have this, and it just, when you put the zipper down, it stops there. And it just looks nice, you know. So I'm just going to go like that, pin that bit down there, and sew it again. Look, I should have done this before putting the zipper, but you know, I'd already sewn it when I thought about doing this. And then here as well. I've opened the zipper, so it's just hanging there. Now it needs to lie like that. The teeth need to go towards the side seams, you know. And then on top, I have placed my lining hood there, and I've lined it along all the edge there. The lining piece for the hood was cut the same way, only that it's 3/8 of an inch shorter at the bottom here compared to that one there. But when they go together here, you can see that this bound edge is slightly longer than here, so it's going to cover that seam there. So it's really well thought out, and so that just needs to be sewn there, pivot, and then all along the top of the hood, all along there to the other side, there, pivot, and then there. And it'll be sewn up here on the top with 3/8 seam allowance. And while I'm sewing on this part that has the zipper, I'll just sew on top of the seam I've already done. So I'm going to start sewing on one side. I have the lining underneath, that all pinned there. And actually I'm just going to sew the whole thing with my zipper presser foot. It can be done. So I'm just going to start below where the lining starts underneath. I can see it. And just sew right on top of the seam I've already done. You know, I'm not a fan of pivoting that much. I like to finish one seam and then start again and have an intersection there. I can feel where the stop is, like right there. But just to make it easier, I'm going to guide the edge of my presser foot along the edge of the fabric. I'll still get the same seam allowance. You see that these can be sewn with the same presser foot without changing it. If you're confused, I'm just sewing along the top of the hood here. The lining is there, the main one is there, they're right sides together. So here I'm getting again to this area that's going to start with the zipper again there. I'm just going to finish to the edge. And now I'm just going to sew where I had sewn before, down to about there, just below where the lining is. I'm going to trim this across to get rid of some bulk, same as on the other side. Okay, so when you flip this, the top here is going to be super clean. Look at that from the right side. So you have the main piece there that goes up to the hood and is enclosed in there. And now this just needs to be aligned there and cover the seam. Pin it all around the neckline there, covering that seam, and then that gets sewn and it closes off everything there on the top. I really like this method. I'm impressed actually. I took the time and hand basted that piece to cover that seam there. So now when I sew, I can not worry about pins and just worry about stitching as straight as I can along there. Look how pretty that looks. It looks so pretty. And then I just have to remove basting stitches, but it's such a clean finish. There is a largish piece that is the pocket lining, this one, and then the kangaroo pocket goes on top. On the edge of the kangaroo pocket, I've just sewn on the band just stretching it out and making it match. And then you have raw areas here on the top of the pocket. I've hand basted that so that they don't move, and I've also hand basted it at the bottom here so that they don't move. On the sides here, I've just put a few pins and I'm just going to leave those there. But now this is what gets united to that other short front bit that has the zipper, the half zipper. So I'm just going to put them right sides together and sew them, and then just carry on with the hoodie, side seams, the sleeves, the cuffs, the band, all that good stuff. This is my son's North Star hoodie. You can see that I've lined the hood with a contrast French terry. It's a darker grey color. I think it's really soft and nice for a lining. Inside, the parrots. I used a lighter color sweatshirting for the center panel of the hood, and the same for the sleeves. Then the kangaroo pocket has the lighter color with the darker grey band, the same that I used for the lining, and the same that I used for that little bit that covers the zipper right there. I think that looks really nice, and it's a nice detail to put on the end of a zipper, especially if you have those zippers with that metal thing. You don't want that to be seen, you know, it's pretty ugly, you know, so that little piece can cover it really nicely. You've seen how all this was done. It's super neat. This zipper is finished very clean inside there with that bias tape. I've shown you this bias tape before. I've been using it in a lot of projects. I'd made it myself. I think it matches the colors I was using there, and I think it looks really cool. I don't know if I'm going to be able to talk. Okay, here you can see this horizontal seam there, and here you can see where that zipper ends. Now, because my zipper was longer and it was a separating zipper, I had to cut it off, and I wanted to make it neat. So I covered that little area with a little bit of bias binding and sewed that on there just to make it neat. It's the way I came up with to get a neat result inside to adapt to my zipper. Once all the hood and the zipper is done, and then you just sew that seam that already has the kangaroo pocket on there. It's quite simple and straightforward to do, like you're doing any sweatshirt. So attaching the sleeves and the band and all that was super simple. And this part was super easy to do. I hope you enjoyed watching that. I am super excited about having made this for him for Mother's Day. So instead of getting a gift, my gift is to give this to him, and he loves it. He loves it so much. And I just had to ask him very gently if I could take some pictures, and he gladly said yes. I wanted to make myself a version, the Constellation, the women's version, with a hoodie as well, because last year I made one with a collar, and I chose a fabric that is not the typical. This is a cotton spandex. It's not heavyweight at all. I'll show you a sleeve here. It's white on the inside, and then the print is on the right side, and it's quite lightweight, has some stretch, and it wouldn't be what you would typically make a hoodie out of, but I wanted to make it because I'm not that cold, and I just like the print, and I had the idea of how it was going to look. So to get around the fact that my fabric was lighter weight, I did opt to line it. Also, when you wear this does open, and you're going to see the wrong side of the fabric there, and if it's not nice, it's not going to look good. You would have seen like white there. I think that doesn't look that nice. So I found some blue lining fabric. It's some type of knit with minimal stretch, but you don't need there to be that much stretch because, as I mentioned, there's quite a lot of positive ease in the design. So I thought it was going to be okay. I'm only lining the body, not the sleeves, and I find the construction turns out to be easier than doing it without the lining. So if you're interested to see how this can be made lined and easier, I think this is the part 2 of Up Close and So Personal with the lined version and the full zipper. For this lined version, I've just assembled the whole body of the hoodie, shoulder seams, side seams. I've sewn the hood onto the neckline. I haven't trimmed the seam allowance, it's not necessary. I've pressed it up. At the bottom, I have sewn the rib knit, the band, but just on one end. So there's one dangling there. And here on the center front, I have fused a little strip of interfacing there to stabilize the area for the zipper. I have assembled the lining in the same way. And now this, when it's folded over there, including that 3/8 seam allowance, I'm just going to mark the middle there. And that's where the zipper is going to end, the zipper stop. And then it'll go up to there. And up here, the pull has to end 3/8 of an inch below the edge, and then I have to have 3/8 of an inch of just zipper tape there. Just the same way I did with the other hoodie, I have basted the zipper on by hand, and I can sew it on without pins, and it's so much better. I've never separated it. I've always kept it intact, united, and you can see that this seam matches that seam. They're both pressed up towards the hood there. I have a little bit of extra zipper I'm going to have to trim away, but I was expecting to have to do that. At the bottom, you have half of this rib knit material left over hanging, and then at a later stage, this is going to wrap over there and meet that seam allowance. So it's basically just getting the width of your rib knit, marking the middle point there, and then having the zipper stop reach right there at the middle of the rib knit. So I just have to attach it like normal, sort out that top bit there, and then comes the fun part of uniting this to the lining. Here on the top, I have trimmed away the zipper tape and just left 3/8 of an inch of zipper tape there, and then the teeth start just below the 3/8 of an inch because that's where the lining is going to be sewn onto. So I've done that with both sides. I have pinned the tape to be flat there, so it stays like that. And I've actually separated the zipper now. You can see, oh, this is the main body. This is the rib knit. The rib knit was slightly smaller than the bottom, so you had to divide it in 4 and go stretching the rib knit to match the bottom. And I've done that first. Then I had all this lining that was the same as that, with the exception that at the center back, I added an extra inch when I put it on the fold, and that formed a pleat there, just to give a bit of ease. This lining fabric has minimal stretch compared to that one, so I wanted to make sure I had enough ease inside the jacket. And then I've just sewn the same way I've sewn there. I've sewn the lining to the other end of the rib knit material there, so it's just one whole thing. So what am I going to do now? I'm going to take this and put it right sides together, but I'm just going to tidy it up and show you what it looks like. Okay, so I've tidied everything up. I've folded that. I've got right sides together. You can see that this comes over and folds over this part of the zipper. And on the top here, I have the zipper taped flat like that, with the teeth pointing to the side. And then this part of the hood is going to match the edge of all the hood there. Come over here. On this side, I also have the zipper taped flat there, and then down. So basically, I'm going to pin the whole thing there. Pin, pin, pin. It'll just be one continuous stitch basically. Okay, so I've pinned everything together. From the bottom here, you see that that middle there is where the end of the zipper is, right there, and it's just folding over. Both seam allowance are pointing up, the lining and the main, and everything matches beautifully all the way up. The seam allowance is also going up to the hoodie, and so is the lining one. So because they're the same size and everything matches along everywhere. Now if you were doing this with sleeves, I would have sleeves on at this point on the main and the lining, and the only difference I would do is do everything here the same. It's just that I'd have sleeves dangling. I would leave an opening on any of the side seams of the lining, just a gap there, open, so that through there you can turn it right sides out. Because I've got all these armholes going on, I can just turn it right sides out through one of those, so I don't need to actually leave a gap on the lining. I'm gonna attach my sleeves on afterwards. I'm only attaching the sleeves on the main fabric. I'm not lining the sleeves. So on the bottom here, I'm just gonna sew on the seam I've already done before when I attach the zipper. I'm just gonna try and sew right on top of it. Here is the part where I'm going to have to turn, and I'm not going to pivot actually. I'm going to finish to the end and then start just the same as I did on the other hood. You could change your presser foot to a traditional one and then change back to the zipper presser foot, but I don't really think I need to do that. I can feel there where the metal teeth is. Okay, so it's all sewn. So I'm just gonna choose any armhole available and just flip it. Now these little bits, you just have to pull the zipper out of there. You can see the zipper teeth coming out of there super neatly. This here is loose. Both of the seam allowances have been pressed up towards the jacket, both on the main and on the lining. So I'm just gonna have to match them up. I'm going to baste them together first by hand, and then I'm just going to stitch in the ditch there. It'll be invisible with a navy thread, and that will just hold that together. Up here on the hood and the neckline, this is loose as well, like separated. Here it's just going to be easier. I'm going to go in through there and match these seams on the inside like that, and I'm just going to sew on the edge of the seam allowance to hold them together, but I'm not going to go and stitch in the ditch there. I have everything inside out on top of my lap. I have just sewn the sleeves, as you can see. I've sewn them on the round. I've done a zigzag stitch to sew that together, and what you see here is the neckline of the main. That is the hood right there. This is the lining. This is that center back pleat, and there's the hood lining, and I'm just going to match these together. So this is the end where that zipper bit is just tucked in there. I can't sew all the way, but up until I can, I've got it pinned all the way around the neckline. So the hood is in here. Both the lining and the main is just tucked within the neckline. So I'm going to sew further away from that main stitch, just a little bit further from that, and it doesn't really have to be that neat. It's going to be on the inside, and it's just to hold the two necklines together. Okay, so I flipped everything right sides out again, and now you can see that these two don't go anywhere. You know, before this was totally open. Now they're closed together like that, and that's how it should be. Okay, so I've got this jacket upside down, obviously, on my lap, and I have some basting stitches by hand there that match the ones on the back. You can't see them, but now that I'm sure that they match together, I'm gonna go and put my stitch in the ditch foot and sew there. This is my stitch in the ditch foot, and mine has an S on it. If you haven't got one, you might want to get one. They're very handy for waistbands and even things like this. There you can see that metal ridge going along that seam there, and I take my time so that I don't wobble and end up sewing on the main fabric. Today's the last day of the 40% off site-wide sale at Love Notions, and I just wanted to thank you all for choosing your patterns and using my affiliate link. That directly supports me, and it has been amazing to see your support that way during this week. So today's the last day. If you still are thinking about some, maybe you would like to try these. I love these. I love them as jackets. I love them as hoods. Very similar to my son's one. From the top you can see it's the same type of hood. It's still lined. Only the difference is that I don't have that seam there, and then I just have a full front and a full zipper. I found some blue rib knit in my stash, just a small amount, but just enough that I needed to do the cuffs and the band. So it's a full separating zipper, it's fully lined inside. You can't see the ugly bit anywhere, the white bit that you can see on the sleeve there. This I just left loose, and I serged the edges of the armhole of the lining, and when I wear it, I can just wear it loose like that. That doesn't bother me, and it's just so nice and clean. It's so easier. I found it took me less time to do this than to do my son's hoodie. Any garment that you make lined just takes it up a notch. I find I love wearing it. I love having the feel of the lining. There you can see I've left a little pleat in the center back. So instead of putting the back piece exactly on the fold, I put it an inch away from the fold, and that 1 inch is the pleat that I made here in the center on the top. There I just leave it loose. And then on the bottom you can see the pleat there too. So that's just a small adjustment to make sure that the lining has a little bit more ease than the jacket. If you saw my son's hoodie, the whole process, it's exactly the same if you're doing the collar version. The only difference that instead of being a hood, it's a collar. The way that this one is sewn to the zipper first, and then at the end you sew the other collar piece that's been bound on the edges and then flipped, like I showed you on the hoodie. It's exactly the same way that you finish these. This is my hoodie slash jacket. It's got a full zipper to the bottom. It fits the hips really well if I zip it up, and if I unzip it, it's all good. This is the length I like, sort of at the full hip there for this style. And of course I have a denim skirt and some chunky sandals. This is how I would wear it in my daily life in a casual way. Here you can see the bottom, the rib knit materials right there. It's super neat. And it's not that much smaller, it just brings it in nicely, but it doesn't create like pockets or anything, so it's super good. And then the zipper is enclosed inside. You can see there, super neat. And it fits really well. This is a size large. Like that, that's how the bottom looks. And you know it's lined inside. Maybe you can see the lining. There is a closer look of the jacket. I really like the full zipper. I think it's much more versatile that way for me. I have an extra long cuff there for my sleeves to reach where I want them to be. So instead of lengthening the sleeve, I just made the cuff longer, the length that you would if you were doing the thumb hole, only I didn't do the thumb hole. I would have needed it way longer to do the thumb hole to match my length of arms. If you can notice, it would have needed to be at least 2 inches longer. Here you can see this top part there, it's just all lined there, so I don't have the bias binding that the other one does. And the zipper goes all the way up to there. You can't really see where the hood starts, but the seam is right there. You know, it's super clean and it's all lined except for the sleeves. So my lining there is just loose. So if I wear this partially zipped, what you're gonna see flop open is the nice blue lining instead of the white color that was behind the cotton, you know, because this is a printed cotton. So I like that. That is the reason why I decided to line this, because I think it looks better this way. When you zip it fully, it includes the hood partially, because the hood starts there, you know, and up higher, that's where it reaches. You know, it's not suffocating me, it's not tight, so I do have space to breathe in there. And I'll put my hair to the side. I haven't cut my hair yet, by the way. That center panel makes the hood fit super nice, you know. That's how that looks. I super like it, and the hood is totally lined as well. It's just a really nice jacket and I'm extremely happy with it. This cotton spandex is just the right weight for the type of warmth that I need here. It's not a sweatshirting, it's not fleeced back, it's just the right layer for me to wear on top. And having the sleeves not lined makes it better, because I'm usually like hot in my arms, and I love it. I just love this so much. It's just the best jacket ever. So cool. These photos I'm going to share with you are super special. It's mother and son photos in our coordinating hoodies, and they sort of match the colors between each other. I'm just happy to have these photos because it's getting harder to get pictures with a teenager, you know? So have a look at them. I love this pattern for my son. He said he wanted 6 more. And I definitely would make myself more of these jackets. I think I'm more of a jacket person. I'm super impressed by the way that this is finished. The instructions, it's just really, really nice. It looks amazing and it covers the seam. It's really well thought out, really nice pattern. So I would highly recommend. I hope you enjoyed this video. I will see you very soon with more sewing. Bye.